The best and worst states to live in 2020. The list is out and we've got it, but we're only going to talk about the worst states to live in. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the focus group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. Find us on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. East on YouTube Live or Facebook. And, of course, everything's available at focusgroupradio.com, including our Tuesday podcast, TFG Unbuttoned. All media can be time-shifted, and we want to thank our partner here on the focus group. That would be Deep Discount. You could get to their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the Deep Discount logo and start your shopping extravaganza. Today, the memo went out. It was a silent memo. Perhaps it was telepathic, but the memo was Blue Shirt Day.
Blue Shirt Day, and I had a shirt almost the exact color of yours. I think mine's a little bit of a Play-Doh blue. Remember Play-Doh?
Yes, one of my favorite toys as a kid. We loved. Did you have the Play-Doh factory?
Well, is that the thing where you put you put the Play-Doh in, you push it in the little
plunger? Yeah, and it comes extrude
I don't know if
stuff.
they make that anymore. My little great nephew Nolan loves Play-Doh, and I went and I looked. It's impossible to find a toy store, so I went to a big box store to look for the Play-Doh factory like we had as kids. They had all kinds of other things, but I didn't see that. I thought that was just such a basic, fun thing.
I wonder if they changed the formulation of Play-Doh at all. Do you think it's the same stuff we had as kids?
You know, it didn't smell the same. I played with it with him, and of course, his mom got upset because he's what, 2.5 years old, I guess. But he mixed the colors together, which that just gives you a blob. Which, as a kid, I didn't like doing that. I didn't like mixing. You know, you could do little faces, but you had to make sure you peeled off the yellow and put it back in the yellow can. He wasn't as much ADD as this little kid has, which I think he does, because he's very particular about his trucks lined up a certain way and where things belong. That the Play-Doh thing doesn't seem to bother him so much if you mix the colors.
Now, hold on a second. I was the same way about my Matchbox cars and my Tonka trucks. There was a line they had to be in, and I noticed if it was off somehow.
Well, things don't change.
I'm just saying.
You're still that way. Things have to be in particular order, otherwise you're bent out of shape, and it's very obvious you get bent out of shape.
Okay, so you're going to appreciate. I'll kick off and say we have been watching. There's a Netflix series that features David Letterman, and he has conversations with a bunch of people. Well, Bob put on the conversation he had with Howard Stern the other night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I guess you and I know Stern a certain way from his radio days and his satellite days. Apparently, he suffered. He is afflicted by OCD,
really?
And he talked about how he would go to work. He never even thought about it. He would touch this, touch that, touch this, do that, triple check something, go out the door, and never give it a moment's thought until someone said to him, like, "This is not normal." So we're in the car the other day going home from the house, and I said, "Hey, Bob, did you check the stove?" His head turns so slowly. He goes, "Yes." He goes, "You checked the stove." He goes, "Twice." He goes, "It's fine." I jiggle the knobs to make sure they're not on or something like that. That's OCD, right?
Well, you have real bad OCD in the car, which I didn't notice when we were driving by ourselves when we did the cross-country trip. But when Bob was in the car, but really it came out with the ice cream tour, because you in Pennsylvania, you looked at your phone at the GPS little map maybe every 60 seconds to make sure we were going the right way. I'm like, "John, it hasn't changed. We haven't even gone a mile." But you kept looking down at that, and I thought, "What are you looking at?" And Brian noticed it too. Brian's like, "Boy, John kept looking down at his phone." I said, "Yeah, I don't know what he was concerned about, where we were going or whatever." But I thought, yeah, you get very fixated on those
data
little
points.
things.
Yeah, Bob noticed it too. So now I know how to put the phone through the IP system in the car, so it comes up on CarPlay, and
then you look at
right
that.
There. Yes, and I get it down to like we're going to be there in 20 minutes, or there's right-hand turn.
Oh, it's 21 minutes now. We're stuck in traffic. Yeah. Well, that's you should have been an airline pilot.
I don't know.
I do have a question, and I don't know if you've noticed it. Do you watch regular TV in Manhattan?
Yes.
All over social media, people have been talking about what's going on with all of these PSAs for nuclear attack. Have you seen those?
Oh my God. how weird is that you okay, so I was in the laundry room the other day and I was talking to one of my neighbors and she said, Were you scared the other day? And I said, What are you talking about? She said, The whole PSA came on the TV about stay indoors. What
Right.
happens if a nuclear war? Like, what is this all about?
Have you seen it? Have you
No,
seen the PSA?
I eventually saw an article in the paper which actually showed what they were showing, but I'm like, why is this happening?
Well, a lot of people said there's lots of things they could have done PSAs about, right? Whether it was get vaccinated or, take care of this or that or keep out of the sun, don't keep your pets in a car in the hot air or something. But everybody's been kind of in Manhattan. They've been scratching their head about this. And someone said, well, there's no imminent attack. I mean, there's nothing that we see on the horizon, but it could happen. And they just thought it was important to put out this PSA. But I thought, this is almost like that radio broadcast of what War of the Worlds or something they did in the 30s.
Orson Welles.
Right,
Yeah.
everybody panicked because it's social media lit up. They said, did someone just see this thing about the nuclear, duck and cover, get in the room, do this, do that? I wonder who paid for that. I wonder if that's a state thing. We'll have to find out.
Well, Tim, if it's state, if it's city, if it's someone in air quotes or taxpayers paid for that, right?
Yeah.
And someone's in an office thinking, you're 100% right. Let's do a PSA about keeping your kids in the car on a 90-degree day. Or your pets.
Right.
Or, no, I got one. Let's do a nuclear war.
So
I'm glad you brought it up.
It says New York Mayor Eric Adams says the nuclear attack PSA was done by the city's emergency management department. They want residents to be prepared if one does occur. Although he said a nuclear attack has not hit New York City. Well, of course. Something's up. Somebody got paid, right? That's all
Yes.
I know. And we should have
Yes.
been in on that one. We could have done it great.
You bet we should have been in on that one, right?
Yeah, it's called the Nuclear And I'm looking at this now. The Nuclear Preparedness PSA, and they said the department. So it was New York City's emergency management department released the short video last Monday, I guess, and it goes through the steps of what New Yorkers should follow in case a nuclear attack occurs. The video has been viewed more than 500,000 times online as well. And people are just baffled by it. I just wondered whether you had seen it or not, because that would be something.
And now I'm going to go online and check it out. And here's my PSA. If a nuclear bomb is destined to blow up over Manhattan, go outside.
Yeah, do what you want.
Because if you survive the blast, you're going to have a horrific,
It's like our cartoon, right? Put your seatbelt on. If really the plane's
Exactly.
going down, the seatbelt's not helping. You might as well enjoy yourself.
it's going down from,
Right. If the plane's crashing, your seatbelt not going to help. Neither is a little oxygen mask. Somebody told me once, if you're to the point where that oxygen mask falls down at 40,000 feet, we got a lot of other problems. Are you worried about who to put the mask on?
Yeah. As you look out the window and the engine's on fire. Yeah.
Right.
Thank God I've never been in a flight like that. So if you are new to our little broadcast here, we kick off the hour with things that caught our eye. This is stuff that Tim and I don't share with each other, but we share with you, and we usually surprise ourselves. Then we have a little visit with our partner that I mentioned earlier, Deep Discount. We take a quick break. Only show in the universe that does a business birthday. That's after the break. And then today we're going to be talking about the 10 worst states in the United States to be living in. And Tim and I think that you're not going to be surprised by the list. In fact, he thinks there are some that should be on that aren't on.
Yeah,
so we'll
I
get
could
to
give you
that.
my own list pretty
Yeah.
easily.
So without further ado, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
This one kind of caught my eye, and then it didn't. Then it did when I read it, because I
Wait, it did, it didn't, then it did.
It did. Anyone, unless you live in a hole, right, knows that you and I did work with Subaru, and you and I were known for the 15-year LGBTQ campaign and Subaru's outreach. And during that time, and that was in the 90s, it would often be said to us, and Tim Mahoney, it was his birthday this week, happy birthday, Tim, would often say, the Japanese don't understand it because there's no gay people in Japan. That was kind of
He used to tell me that all the time, and I used to just be like, excuse me?
right.
No?
They don't have such thing. They'd always say, we don't have such thing in Japan. Okay. So this headline is, Nintendo will recognize gay marriages despite the Japanese ban. So they said, Nintendo says love is love. The Japanese multinational video game company Nintendo announced that they would recognize gay marriages regardless of the country's rulings. This past June, a district court in Osaka ruled that Japan's ban on same-sex marriages does not go against their constitution. Currently, Japan is the only country in the G7, so those are the seven large industrial developed nations. Japan's the only country in the G7 group of developed nations that has a prohibition on LGBTQ unions. So Nintendo says it's time for the government to catch up, and they're going to start recognizing their employees who are in either partnership, they call it a partnership system, which is like our employees' domestic partnership benefits or same-sex partner benefits that we had in the U.S. before marriage. So they're going to publicly support a partnership system which states that employees in domestic partnerships or same-sex relationships will have all the benefits of opposite-sex marriage. They also established that common law marriage between couples will also be observed the same way. Says they want to create a work environment that supports and empowers each and every one of our unique employees. And they also updated their guidelines and their policies with HR and added gender and sexual orientation as part of their EEOC code. So, which again is something that we've done here. But so what I thought about this is, once again, and you've always said this, once again, here we are with a corporation or a business taking a leadership role and doing what the governments in a lot of countries have not done, whereas the businesses recognize the importance of treating everyone equally and leading the way on this. So a big kudos to Nintendo.
Well, and Nintendo is not just any old company, right? No. I mean, their user base, their fans of their games is enormous. So it does have an impact, right?
Yeah, Nintendo's one of the largest, I think, if not the largest, one of the largest companies in Japan, if not the world. I'd have to check that, but
Nintendo's huge. Yeah. I mean, it's global, and so their corporate headquarters being in Japan proper, I think they're doing a great thing. And their games are also inclusive. There's characters that can be, you can dress your characters a certain way, the whole bit. So yeah, good piece.
Yeah, I laughed at this one, and then I they had me going down the rabbit hole because when they said that they would recognize gay marriages, I thought, well, this is very un-Japanese of them, because it's almost a little bit like a cult. You have to adhere to the norms as being the norm. Yeah. And that was my nickname, Mandaji, which was
the nail that could not be laid flat. The nail that will not lay flat.
Right, or problem child, would not conform. So I said,
they got you there.
Nintendo's being Mandaji.
Yeah. So caught my eye for me. I'm going to kick off first. My caught my eye comes from one of our listeners who is definitely getting a pair of socks for this, and you'll see why, Tim. But before I go into that, I want to also mention that one of our listeners, Chris, and Chris, by the way, is someone who has a movie mind like mine. Whenever the movie game comes up in September, which, by the way, folks, September is Criterion Month here on the Focus Group and on TFGM Button. We're going to be giving away Criterion discs all the month of September. Anyway, Chris is a huge fan of the show, listens with his family sometimes, and he sent the following note. He goes, "Thanks so much for touching on the issues librarians are dealing with." This is our show previous week. We talked about how librarians are coming under attack in many communities simply because they're doing their job. My wife is a department head at her library and is dealing with all the issues that you bring up here in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. If it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. She's burnt out and ready to leave. I don't blame her. Then he has a P.S. I'm a Chicago White Sox fan, in part due to the pee troughs at Wrigley Field. The old Comiskey Park had them too, but at least they knocked that place down in the early 90s. So if you listen to last week's show, we had this little sidebar thing where Tim and I talked about in our youth going to a bar one day, and Tim's like, "You don't want to go in that bathroom." And they had a pee trough.
Right.
So there you go. So my Caught My Eye follows up on libraries again, except this came from one of our listeners. His name is David B. And the headline reads, "Two LGBTQ state library commissioners fret over new logo's color scheme." And I will now put that up for you. And here we go. The Montana State Library has a new logo, and because it's using the colors red, yellow, green, and blue in its logo, people are upset. And Tim, you'll love this. The commissioners of the Montana State Library are considering scuttling a nearly $300,000 rebranding project because of what they regard as the new logo's visual proximity to the LGBTQ pride flag. The logo was designed by the Milwaukee-based firm Hoffman and York and was unveiled to the library's commissioners at a June 15th meeting after receiving a positive reception from library staff in early May. The presentation to the commission devolved into a critique and debate over a rainbow-esque part of the image. So I'll summate this quickly and say that what the design team did was they decided that they were going to use a logo that was they were going to base it on the theory of a prism. And as you know as a child, the prism breaks light into 4 component spectrums, the red, yellow, green, and blue. But during this meeting where they show this to the commissioners who had not previously seen some of this work, some of the commissioners were like, wait a minute. We don't want to come under attack. We don't want people to associate this with the LGBTQ community. What's the big deal about that, I would say? And this became a groupthink problem. So even though this had been worked on for months, and many people have seen this at the lower levels, by the time it got to these commissioners, and by the way, this was not paid for by the state of Montana. This was the funds were coming out of a philanthropic fund that was set up for the library, so it wasn't taxpayer dollars that were doing this. But I read this from our listener, and I just thought, oh my God. And here's what some people said. That is going to represent from now on what people see for us, said Commissioner Tammy Hall. Tammy, speaking at her first meeting after being appointed in March by Governor Greg Gianforte. I think a rainbow as to what we're doing in the library is going to set off a firestorm. And, it goes from there. My reaction to this was twofold. One, you have told stories in the past about when the agency came in when you were at Subaru and they would present creative and, the bike story.
Yeah, well, they would get sidelined by some crazy comment.
Yeah. But this one strikes me as being... I think this is and I'm glad our listener David sent this in because this shows you how far-reaching and how caustic this dialogue about the LGBTQ community that's occurring in state houses and nationwide is that a simple logo for a library based on a prism, the thought process behind it being that a library can expose all sorts of great knowledge to people like a prism can break light down. Suddenly you're having commissioners worrying that people are going to think it's associated with the LGBTQ community?
Well, it doesn't even look like anything LGBTQ. First of all, it could be my monitor, but it almost looks like it's a terracotta, gold, green, and blue. I mean, it's not obvious rainbow colors, right?
Yeah.
And
here's what one commissioner said. I do have to agree with the rainbow, said Commissioner Robin Scribner, and appointed by this same governor, apparently, who clarified that she had nothing against the pride flag. Don't we hear that all the time? I have nothing against... some of my best friends are gay.
Yeah, I've got a black friend.
But I do believe that Montanans possibly could see that because I did, and I'm a regular Montanan. So I believe that. I think it could be seen that way. I'm a regular Montanan. Well, what about another regular Montanan who might just look at it and think it was a printing company? Bob looked at the logo and he said to me, that could be for a printer.
Yeah.
CMYK, right?
I mean, I'm looking at it I'm like, okay, is that a keystone? Is that a house with the ray coming out? I don't know what it is.
Well, there's a lot of triangle shapes, so it's definitely based on prism, but I agree with you that it's a little confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this would have come to the top of your list if you were picking a logo. But, the color issue, I wonder if they move the colors around. So if they put the blue where the gold was and if that would change their minds. But what do they do when it rains and the sun comes out? And there's a rainbow.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking absurdity here. And
there's Tim. Yeah, there's Tim Tim, there you go, being smart. I'll wrap this up by saying one of the commissioners said, the reason we hired professionals is because we're not the professionals. We have so many different opinions about this right here. They cannot appease every single person, nor are we going to appease every Montanan. I do think that the prism idea is a good one, and I don't see this association with the pride flag. I just see color. That was a gentleman that has been on the library commission for some time, and he'd probably be one of our friends or someone we would sidebar with. But so thank you to David B. for this follow-up. His email to me said, not only are they attacking librarians, they're now attacking the far right's going after library logos.
Well, where does it stop, right? I mean, that's the craziness of it all, is where does it all stop? because what a waste of time,
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
But listen, having been in many a meeting here in Rehoboth, you can waste a lot of time in these meetings
Well, I'm on our co-op
talking
board,
about
and
stuff.
I completely agree. We had a whole conversation the other day about storing stuff in a bike room or something. I mean, it's got to be discussed, it's got to get done. But sometimes I'm like, really, yeah,
Why'd you pick that paint color?
yeah. Where'd that come from? And yeah. So that was. I just thought this whole. It's a nice thank you, listeners. And if you do send us something and we use it on Caught Our Eye, I'll be more than happy to send you a pair of socks. They're purple. I wonder if that's going to give you away as being part of the rainbow.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? We had all different. The only color, well, yeah.
I think we've done almost every color, Tim.
We didn't do pink.
No.
We were going to
the
do
purple's
pink,
the closest we've come to. Yeah.
And that was actually a recommendation from listeners, was to do purple.
Mm-hmm. That's still a popular color. So. All right, folks. As I mentioned at the top of the podcast, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and we would like to have you visit them by going to us, which is focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the shark logo, which is a shark called Sharky. I used to do Sharky a lot more, but got some feedback that people didn't like Sharky.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
He comes out.
Who didn't like Sharky?
A couple people are like, okay, lay off Sharky. You got to listen to your audience, right? So we do the Pride Leprechaun comes out now and then. Sharky comes out now and then. This month, though, we have a summer blockbuster sale, and I love summer blockbuster sale because it's movies that are the blockbusters of the summer. Sidebar, my sister sent me a photo, I should have put it in here, of a mannequin from Target that was wearing a tank top that said Jaws on it, and someone had taken one of the arms off the mannequin, which is super brilliant. If you know Jaws, right? It's just so fun, right? So what is your pick for the summer blockbuster sale? I know what it is. I like it, so go ahead.
There were so many things to pick from. That was the interesting thing here with this sale. That I could have picked 10 easily, even just on the front page. But I dug a little deeper just to see what else was there. And this is one of these movies where if I stumble across it, which I haven't in years, but I used to when it would be perhaps on regular TV, which doesn't happen much anymore. But the movie's Cape Fear.
Oh.
And originally released in 1991, but then it was done through Deep Discount in 2005 on DVD. You can get it for it's under $20, but it's based on the 1962 thriller and Martin Scorsese's Thriller, and it's such suspense. And I just remember seeing it the first time, being on the edge of my seat with thinking I know it was going to happen, but it didn't happen, and it really is a crazy suspenseful thriller. It stars Robert De Niro, who's an ex-con. He's psychotic. He was represented by Nick Nolte as an attorney in a rape case, and he ends up getting out of jail and then comes back to torment the family. And it's just one of those movies that just had stuck with me. When I saw it, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, I would watch it now if it was on, sort of thing. So that would be a good one to add to your collection.
Yeah, you picked a really good one, Tim, because the movie ratchets up the suspense and the tension by minute. Like all these things start happening to the family, and you know that this guy...
When he's in the kitchen with the daughter, it's so creepy.
Yeah. Good recommendation. All right, so Tim recommends Cape Fear. I went with a sci-fi classic, not a classic per se, but a lot of people associate it with summer blockbuster. It's called Elysium. And this was a movie that starred Matt Damon and Bob. Oh, guess what we watched last night on, I think it was on Showtime, Team America. Matt Damon!
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, we couldn't stop laughing. Tim, it was the movie you know and love, the cuss words, the whole bit. Team America is another recommendation, but Elysium, a century from now, the most privileged of Earth's populace will have abandoned the planet for the luxurious orbiting colony of Elysium, leaving a globe ravaged by environmental and economic class for the rest of us. So when this movie had the trailer, the trailer for this was great. The setup was great. Bob and I saw it with our friends Ed and Rafat. And I remember coming out of the movie theater years ago, and we were like, wow, it was visually stunning. And I remember Rafat and Bob, who are not so hooked into the sci-fi thing. They're like, what'd you guys really think of it? And I said, we enjoyed it, but it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it on broadcast lately. It doesn't pop up too often, and I have not seen it on any of the streamers. So I think you would find Elysium, if you're a sci-fi fan, to be fun.
Okay, as a slight sidebar,
Yeah.
you and I haven't discussed these new pictures from the Webb telescope.
Oh, amazing.
Now, but I think the pictures are stunning, and they've done a comparison with Hubble with Webb, and I understand now that they can see far more, whatever. But the numbers and what they talk about is just so mind-boggling.
Yes,
it's almost ridiculous to think that there can't be something else out there, but we probably will never know it. So what's the purpose of doing this?
Good point.
Like you just couldn't, our bodies could not physically travel the distance that it would take to go to, if there was another place like Earth, right? What did they say? It would take 430 some years going at the speed of light or something.
Who knows? You have to figure out where that planet is and how long, and if you can't even pass the speed of light. So yeah, it's
what freaks me out about it is, do you think if there was another group of beings that lived like us, had they discovered different things? Did they get along? Did they create a different religion? How do they? So that I just can't. It's too much for me to comprehend. It's like being a weatherman. I want to work in one of these telescopes. You come up with all kinds of stuff, which is why you love science fiction.
Yeah, true.
Because everything's possible, right?
Yeah. Well, and in a universe that seems to be infinite, with galaxies numbering in the thousands or millions galaxies, and each galaxy has millions of stars, and it's kind of mind-boggling.
What was the new release?
Moving on, a movie that I'm happy to promote. This is called Drive My Car. It's available only on Criterion. They're the studio that's releasing this. I can't recommend this film enough. This is an amazing movie. It's based on a short story, and the movie itself, the short story portion that it's based on, is perhaps the first half of the movie. The second half is the director and the writer's take on that story moving forward. I saw it last winter with my neighbors Barbara and Lucy. We had movie day. We were transfixed, and I'm still thinking about the movie today. It's certain. It has a pace. It's almost 3 hours long. Sit down, relax, strap yourself in, and pay attention, and enjoy some of these long camera things. There's a lot of shots where people are driving on car trips, and if you've ever been in a car on a long car trip, there's a sort of a hypnotic quality that happens with looking at the road, but it's all through Japan and the connecting islands, and it's dubbed. So I want to just point that out. But let me tell you a little bit about it.
Did you read?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I read the screen. Yeah. So this film, it's based on an actor who's played by Hidetoshi Nishijimi. Dearly loved his wife, Otto, despite her infidelities, and her abrupt death pushed him to mental collapse. Offered a comeback staging of Uncle Vanya. And that's another thing that weaves through this whole thing is this Uncle Vanya play. His backers insisted on his being chauffeured by a damaged young woman named Misaki, and the initially dismissive thespian finds someone who can help him process his grief. It's a very delicate movie. It moves back and forth. It highlights some real, true human emotions and some really fascinating stuff. I can't recommend it enough, but I really do like Drive My Car. Only available on Criterion, and you can get it through deep discount.
I have trouble reading, but I know a lot of people.
Oh, you mean reading the subtitles?
Well, because you then really have to be. I think if you're in a theater, like you said, you're there to do it.
You have a good point about that. When we saw the theatrical release, all three of us commented on how easy it was to understand the movie.
Right.
And the subtitling, I want to point out, moves at a very sedate pace. Even though, Japanese, it sounds sometimes like they may be saying more than they are. And then the subtitle comes up, you're like, oh, okay. And so they broke it, they did it, maybe it wasn't a word-for-word exact translation. I probably was, but it was very easy to keep up. So I don't let that be your bar or your hindrance to the movie.
To avoid it. Okay.
Yeah.
Good choice. So as John mentioned, there's a sale going on right now. Of course, summer blockbuster sale going on at deep discount. You can get there by going to our website, which is focusgroupradio.com. Click on the deep discount logo, start shopping away, and there's all kinds of great things there to add to your collection, or to give as gifts, or to just collect. And I picked Cape Fear. John picked Elysium. I love that name.
Yeah.
And also, as a sidebar, mention Team America, and then of course the new release this week is Drive My Car, which is available through deep discount as well. It comes out on Blu-ray, and it's has the stamp of approval from Criterion.
And me.
And John, who saw it and enjoyed it with his friend Barbara.
Oh, I should mention it won an Academy Award, too.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
For what? Do you
Best
remember
Foreign
what
Picture.
Oh, wow. Cool. Okay. I always am curious about those best foreign pictures because I just always think that they are really the cream of the crop. So then, okay, you could turn my mind about reading the Japanese. We'll see what happens. So, hey, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we have a business birthday and then a shop talk that John found about the worst, is it the worst states in America to live in?
Yeah, 10 worst states to live in.
Yeah, see if your state made the list. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
You're listening to The Focus Group, and that's John Nash, and I'm joined by Tim Bennett down in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Tim, is it raining down there today?
It's not raining today. Well, not yet anyway. It's
When we were in
warm,
studio, we shared the same weather, but now that we're in different places, we can, fetch about the weather in different ways.
As a crow flies, probably quicker than if we had to drive or take a ferry or the boat or something. But
yeah, as the crow flies, you're correct. It would be very fast, but traditional transportation means not so
hey, have you heard of
fast.
this new company called Joby?
No.
Joby. It's going to launch 2024 Manhattan. Promises to get you, if you were in downtown Manhattan, you could go down to the heliport there.
Yeah.
And it's like taking an Uber. You would just get in your little app, and it would get you to JFK in 7 minutes.
And they'll charge you for that, right?
Well, I was trying to figure out how much they're going to charge. They're saying it's going to be affordable, but they could do it's an electric plane slash helicopter, and it's going to take. They're launching in 2024. They've already got approval in a number of places, and they said it's going to really change people's way of getting around, particularly with congested areas, and the range is about 150 miles. So I was trying to figure out if I could, you could zip up to Manhattan at the heliport.
You could Joby up to
Joby up.
I don't know. I
figured you'd be all over this on it. Would you take the Joby?
I would, except I've seen a few too many news stories about helicopter problems.
Well, it's not it's like one of those Ospreys, which was even worse, right? The Brits had with the plane goes
You mean
up.
it's like a vertical takeoff?
Right, and then the propellers
and then it goes
angle,
plane.
and then it
okay.
goes, yeah. Although I'm concerned about electric still.
I mean, it's as long as those batteries hold, right? You got the power, but yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to fly an electric plane.
Yeah, maybe not yet. We'll do the car, but we'll hold off on plane.
Yeah.
All right, without further ado.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Born today, July 20th in 1939, Jeanne Bice. She died at 71 on June 10th in 2011. I never, ever heard of Jeanne Bice. Have you?
Yes, and
or
well,
only have you heard of her? Or have you heard of her because of seeing this, or did you know who? If I asked you last week who Jeanne Bice was, would you have known?
No. But when I saw the picture, I'm like, wait a minute, I remember her. So, because she sold all this stuff on QVC and Home Shopping, right?
And you probably remembered her because you loved The Soup with Joe McHale. She was he lampooned her quite a bit.
That is one big reason why. In fact, that's probably the reason why I know her. Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know Jeanne Bice, and I did not, she was an entrepreneur, businesswoman, and television personality. She's founder of the Quaker Factory. It's a line of clothing, which led her to have frequent appearances on QVC, which began in 1995. When she died in 2011, the company was grossing $50 million in sales a year. What are we doing wrong?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
If you look at her, she's salt of the earth, housewife, born in Wisconsin, and she was born in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which is a cool little town. The family moved to Ripon, and her husband died at a heart attack suddenly. Her husband, Butch Bice, Arlo Butch Bice, died of a massive heart attack at 42. Meanwhile, she and a friend of hers had opened up this women's apparel store and gift shop. It was called The Silent Woman. And she and her friend had opened this up. And it was really bankrolled by their husbands. And she said it gave them something to do. And she really didn't have any sort of skill, she felt, other than running this little store she had. So when she was left, though, with 2 children and the husband with the heart attack in the early 40s, she had to figure out what to do and get a source of income. So she said, I had very few career skills. But with her friend and the partner in the gift store, Mary Ann Dietrich, who was just getting divorced at the same time, they began creating seasonal clothing. So they were things such as at Halloween time, they put the blouse with a pumpkin on it, or maybe ghosts, or they had Christmas trees, 4-leaf clovers, and spraying hearts around Valentine's Day, and probably where the ugly Christmas sweater came from, right? She was famous for doing these holiday sort of sweaters. There is a clip, which I should post to our Facebook page, of her on QVC talking about somebody wanted her to do a Jesus sweater. And she said she wasn't going to do one because she said religious people like me don't wear your religion on your front.
God, thank her.
She
right?
said, but so many people asked to do it. She said, what am I going to do? So she said, I did a Jesus sweater. And she said, I did a Hanukkah sweater. She said, the Jesus sweater sold well. No, she said, the Hanukkah sweater just poo-pooed out. Didn't do well. And they're showing the 2 people with the Hanukkah sweater on and the Jesus sweater. It ended up making like 10 different Jesus sweaters. Always sold out. And so she said, I never wanted to be in business, but it came about as an absolute lark, and I needed to do it to support my family. She relocated to Florida in 1983. She continued working on this kind of seasonal clothing at the Quaker Factory. She made her first appearance on QVC. She always wore a headband.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a little quacker thing, quack, 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 she'd make a noise on. And she proved to be a financial success immediately with her first appearance. She sold out within a few minutes all of her clothes on air. She did better than Joan Rivers and the Beekman Boys.
Wow.
And so that first show, it created a 16-year relationship with QVC. She said she owes everything to her customers who bought this stuff, and of course QVC for giving her the break. And despite the fact that she was often a form of laughter for Joel McHale's The Soup, which I loved because the 90s had so many of those. He would lampoon all the different reality shows and talk shows, and she was often a cult figure for him on the show, and he actually gave her award, the Soup Award, which she, to this day, says it was her greatest feat of all time, getting the Soup Award. And she died, unfortunately, of uterine cancer in 2011, and but she was also, and I should post this as well, I laughed. Richard couldn't understand why I was laughing so hard. Mad TV would do parodies of her. And she'd come out with these, edible Christmas sweaters. And the models always looked horribly uncomfortable in these sweaters for the different seasons. But they have on there, where it says sold out or whatever. They have the sizes. It's XXL, XXXXXXL, XXXXXXXL. And as soon as the model walks out, the line sold out off the big thing, which was such your humor. Such a subtle thing. If you just saw that, you'd be laughing at the damn thing. And so anyway, happy birthday to Jeanne Bice.
And that was that Mad TV that
Mad
was doing
TV.
that? Yeah, okay.
It was similar to when they did the Evander Holyfield with the, looks like faux leopard. He goes, faux 5, maybe 6 leopard. which again, you turned me on to that one. You can't do that anymore.
No.
So
Even
she
though
at one point in this parody, though, at one point, the actress who's there with her, she talks about how she's gotten so big she can't see her vagina anymore, and how the woman held it in. You could see her laughing, trying to hold it back. It's just, I'll post it to our Facebook page. But I love this business birthday just because it just popped up, and I thought, oh my God, this is the woman who did all these clothing with the anchors and the Christmas trees and the little bunnies and eggs and everything on them, and probably can pick up any of this stuff still at probably Kohl's or Walmart or QVC.
And because she was so popular, she was immortalized with a Mad TV sketch, and Joel McHale would lampoon her on The Soup, right?
Yeah, you love Joel McHale. I remember you turned me on to him with the soup.
Yeah, I still miss the soup. I mean, that was one of our shows we would actually tune into as appointment television. It was like we got to watch the soup because then you didn't have to watch anything else. You didn't have to see any of the other stupid reality shows,
Well,
right?
what was so great about it? He would take what was the funniest, worst thing on Jerry Springer that week, or Maury, or MTV, or any of those things. But when all those shows kind of stopped, he kind of lost his being. And then the other kid came out. What was his name? The tall guy that took his role, that did a show after that on ETV, would do all the kind of craziness. Do you remember him? Handsome guy, right after Joel McHale.
No, see, wasn't Joel McHale the last one because he was on Community, right?
Yeah, there's another guy now that does it, but I don't remember his name, and I should. I could see his face. I'll have to look him
There
up.
was a brief reignition of the soup on Netflix. They did a 13-part series. Never was renewed, unfortunately. I loved it, but anyway. All right, at the top of the show, we mentioned an article we're going to be discussing, and this is about the 10 worst states to live in. And it comes to us from, I believe it's from CNBC. Let me double check that. And it's based on a series of scores they do. So it's like life, health, inclusion category considers factors such as crime rates, environmental quality, and healthcare. For the first time in 2022, we also consider the availability of childcare. It's a big one, which the U.S. Chamber of Commerce found is a major obstacle for parents seeking to re-enter the workforce. And it does come from CNBC's annual America's Top States for Business study, and we're looking at the ones that are not at the top. We also consider inclusiveness of state laws in areas like protections against discrimination and voting rights, which I think is a really important thing to put into a survey like this. That's not politics, it's business. That's a very good point. And then many Gen Z and millennial workers will turn down jobs that don't match their values, Deloitte found. One of their partners who did the survey. If you need workers, you want to be in a place they are willing to go. We found some states that are particularly welcoming, but these 10 states fall short. And Tim, why don't you kick it off with the number 10, like we're going 10 to 1, so number 10.
Right. Okay, so the number 10 state was surprising actually to me, but it's
I
Nevada.
agree.
It was Nevada. It says with only 400 licensed child care centers in a state with more than 3 million people, Nevada is one of the worst states for access to child care at a time when it's desperately needed. It also says that the air quality, which I would agree with this if you've been to Vegas when it's hot out, which is most times, they say at least 3 weeks of the year there's high ozone days, at least 3 weeks during the year, which is an unhealthy reading there. So they get a grade F, I guess, for health inclusion score, and children care and air quality is not so good either. A strength, though, is voting rights, they said, and inclusiveness. So Nevada was number 10.
Number 9 is the state of Tennessee. The volunteer state has notched some impressive economic development victories lately, like a major Ford electric vehicle facility, getting lots of new residents in the process. But those workers are moving to a state that is chipping away at inclusiveness. The state has passed a series of laws aimed at the LGBTQ community, including a transgender sports bill this year that the Human Rights Campaign calls discriminatory, unfair, and unnecessary. For life, health, and inclusion, 108 out of 325, grade F, strength, child care, air quality, weaknesses, inclusiveness, and crime. Next up.
You know, I just one thing about Tennessee. I always thought I used to go to Tennessee a lot in college.
Yeah, you did.
And it's a beautiful state.
Yeah.
But you don't want to venture too far inland or too far off the beaten path. Number 8 was Indiana, which sometimes surprises me, sometimes doesn't. As a Midwestern state, usually Minnesota is probably the most liberal. Minnesota and Illinois, followed by Wisconsin. But Indiana and Ohio seem to be a little bit behind. Indiana has some of the worst in terms of public health, according to the United Health Foundation. They only spend about $76 per person, which is among the worst in the nation. Also with child care. So similar to Nevada, health resources and child care are a problem there with a grade F.
Okay. Number 7 is the state of New Mexico. The land of enchantment is cursed by crime. I love the way they write this. The second highest violent crime rate in the nation, according to FBI statistics. Only Alaska is worse. That was fascinating. In her 2020 State of the State address, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham made a business case for tackling the problem. If we want to keep up our economic momentum, she said, we have got to get crime under control. So their life, health, and inclusion score in 2022 was 101 out of a possible 325. That gives them a grade of F. Their strength is voting rights, and their weaknesses are crime, air quality, and health. And again, this survey was conducted through the lens of worst and best states. We're listing the worst based on this idea of, economic mobility, business opportunity, people moving to a state for jobs, et cetera. This might deter them from considering that state.
Right.
What's up next?
Number 6 was Louisiana, which is known as America's unhealthiest state. That's a nice moniker. According to the United Health Foundation, the nation's third highest level of cholesterol, fourth highest rate of premature deaths. According to FBI statistics, the violent crime rates are also among the nation's highest. So for health and inclusion score, you get a 97 for an F, 97 out of 325. And weaknesses are health, crime, and voting rights. They said some health resources are a strength there. I have an awful lot of friends who love New Orleans. I never understood the excitement of it. But a lot of people, I think, equate New Orleans, Louisiana, and maybe doesn't fit the entirety of the state. You used to go to New Orleans a bit. Did you like it?
I thought it was a cool city. I enjoyed every visit I had. I would say that if someone said, hey, let's go to New Orleans, I'd happily go.
Right.
I thought it was beautiful, and the people were super friendly. And I think you're right, though. Like many areas, sometimes major metropolis zones don't necessarily reflect the states they're in, but.
Right.
All right, number 5 on this list of the worst states is Missouri. And this year, Missouri grudgingly agreed to join 45 other states grudgingly and allow early voting, beginning with the general election in November. But the same bill, scheduled to take effect after the state's August primaries, outlaws most mail-in voting and adds a deeply controversial voter ID provision. Life, health, and inclusion scores a mere 89 out of 325, giving them a grade of F. The strength is child care, and the weaknesses is crime and voting rights, which is interesting.
Yep. Number 4, this one surprised me. South Carolina comes in as the 4th worst state to live in, with only 2.19 hospital beds for 1,000 residents, or per 1,000 residents. It finishes near the bottom for healthcare resources. It also ranks 44th for access to clinical care. So they, too, get a score of 83 out of 325 for an F. It does have some good air quality, however, but health, resources, crime, and voting rights are a weakness.
Oklahoma is our 3rd state on the 10 worst, according to this business survey. Oklahomans are not big on taking care of themselves, according to United Health Foundation data, which show they are among the least likely to exercise or even eat fruits and vegetables. The state is also among the worst for adults without health insurance and childhood vaccines. Hospitals have spent much of the COVID-19 pandemic under stress, according to the data from the Commonwealth Fund. So their 2022 life, health, and inclusion score is a low 79 out of 325, giving them a grade of F. Their strengths, no metrics in the top 50%, and their weaknesses are health, health resources, voting rights, and inclusiveness. So it looks like, is James Langford from Oklahoma?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like he needs to get some work done.
Well, they all do. Listen, you and I had I was remembering this. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but when you and I did the one of the cross-country trips for VW, we spent 4th of July in Oklahoma, at Oklahoma City.
That was the Beetle, yeah.
Which was a fun, not a fun. Maybe it
was
fun.
We were in Oklahoma City, right? We had a great time.
Oklahoma City, which we enjoyed, quite frankly, and we were very moved by the memorial there at the Mara building. Where the explosion was, right during the Clinton administration, I guess, the federal building.
Yep.
And but we had a good dinner and a great hotel, and but we didn't really spend a lot of time in Oklahoma other than that one 4th of July, which was a nice change of pace for us. Number 2 kind of surprised me because everybody keeps talking about what a great place it is. Texas, which is also our largest listenership still here on our show, The Focus Group. We still have a huge listenership in Texas. So hello, everybody. Thanks for staying with us. But Texas came in as number 2 as one of the worst states, or the number 2 state of worst states to live in. They said despite quality of life issues, people still flock to Texas. The state ranks number 3 for net migration of college-educated workers. So I believe this means people that graduated college and have left the state, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And the only 2 ahead of it are Florida and Washington, which I was surprised about, both of those 2 as well. They said there's limited child care options, a stressed healthcare system with high rates of uninsured. What happened? I guess they didn't do Obamacare. And new rights on voting are curbs on voting rights as well. So they get a 72 out of 325 for a grade of F. And they said they don't have any metrics in terms of strengths in the top 50%. I was surprised by that because everybody kind of, Texas threatens they're going to leave the union and all these other things on their own, but maybe they better take a look in the mirror.
And the state that ranks as the worst state, this was a surprise to me, frankly, is Arizona. And before Tim and I reviewed this list, Tim said to me, he goes, I could think of at least three to five states that should have been on the list, maybe in place of some other ones. But again, the criteria they were looking at was access to child care, affordable child care, let's put it that way, health care, anti-discrimination policies, access to voting rights, etc. So Arizona comes in as the worst. It's a dry heat, the Grand Canyon State saying goes, but it leads to some of the worst air quality in the nation, so we have that. That puts more stress, poor air quality puts more stress on the already overtaxed healthcare system, which is short on hospital beds and staff. The state just spends $79 per person on public health, among the country's lowest. It offers stunning natural beauty and top-notch cultural and recreational attractions, but that comes at a stiff price. Their grade is 67 out of a possible 325 points. That gives them a firm F. No metrics in the top 50 in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, air quality, health resources, inclusiveness, and crime. So that is the list of top 10. Again, this was compiled with a very specific criteria that I outlined a moment ago, but it's kind of a fascinating list because name one that you would think would be on there.
Well, I would have thought, I thought Arkansas and Mississippi were missing. I thought Alabama was probably missing. Maybe one of the Dakotas. But, when I looked at the list, Arizona is red. Maybe it's more purple than it is red or blue. Same with New Mexico and Nevada. But the other ones are solidly red states. And, again, they're often, particularly in Texas, tout what a great place it is for business, a great place to be. I know people that do live there and love it. But the fact that when you actually do some of these measurements and where it falls out could be eye-opening. Arizona was a big shock for me as well, because that's another state that appears to be where people are moving to in greater numbers.
Yep.
And maybe so it's just a strain on their infrastructure and their systems, as you mentioned, for criteria. But yeah, I thought for sure Mississippi would be on the list.
Yeah, I agree.
Of any of them, I don't know if there were any that you thought might have.
No,
been
you
on
nailed
the list.
you nailed the exact ones that I would have, because they often appear and they have appeared in the past on some of these rankings of where you want to live or raise a family or business opportunities, whatever it may be.
Right. So that would have been a good Tim's list back in the day, John.
Yes,
you would have,
and that would have been a hard one, right?
Yes, it would have been a hard one. And of course, you often know people sometimes would.
That's allowed.
That's allowed. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. And thanks to our sponsor here at Deep Discount. Be sure to head over to focusgroupradio.com and click on the Deep Discount logo. Start shopping away. We'd like you to do that because you get credit and we get credit, and you enjoy some great savings there. I picked Cape Fear this week during the summer blockbuster sale. John picked Elysium, and the new release this week is Drive My Car. We hope everyone is out there being safe this summer, as we're kind of in our midpoint of the summer. And as we've always said, remember, don't text and drive. Arrive alive, and we'll see you on our podcast on Tuesday. TFG Unbuttoned. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.